beautiful morning for all our distinguished guests. My name is Khaled Habib. I'll have the pleasure of being with you today at the EU-AFDB Water Investment Forum. And this is, for me, it's a great event because it resembles the future of the world, not only for this continent. In a previous life, I've been working a lot with multinational firms, and I was always responsible for Africa, so I traveled across all the African continent, all the way to South Africa, to Ethiopia, to Senegal, to Namibia, to Zimbabwe, Zambia, Ghana, Nigeria. I've been everywhere. And I can tell you, I have never seen a place on earth with this level of purity, potential, and resources. And I guess that's the challenge that we have. In this continent, we have tremendous resources. We have some of the brightest minds in the world. We have some of, let me say, the purest intentions. This nation has never meant harm to anyone, has never exploited any other nation or any other continent like others have been doing to our continent. I think now we're in a great time where the Africans are coming together. We see lots of activities through the the African Union. We see lots of activities like the COMESA, for example. And of course, we see the African Development Bank doing a great job. But then we need to make more. We need to come together closer. We need to discuss things in detail. We need to agree and align on strategies and a clear vision, and then on clear implementation mechanisms. They always tell us that the devil lies in small details, and this is exactly what happens all the time. So I guess that's a great opportunity in Cairo, the heart of Africa, to bring all the Africans together, to discuss where we stand, how far can we go, and end up during this great event today with action items, specific things to do, to make things really happen on the ground. I won't take longer of your time, and we have some dear and distinguished guests over here today. Let me start by welcoming and giving the floor to our dear guest and His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Abdel Ati, Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation, the Arab Republic of Egypt. Please, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. I hope that all of you have had good sleep, and Excellencies, friends and colleagues.
لو في فرنساوي اديني ترجمة.
كلها بالانجليزي. So it is a pleasure for me to be part of this session. I'm keen actually to attend the session, though there is other commitment waiting for me, but it is important to be here this morning. In fact, finance is one of the challenges that face our continent and face the water sector. For example, as I mentioned in my presentations in different sessions, that our national water resources plan require investment about from 50 to 100 billion US dollar over 20 years time. And this is really a big challenge for us to mobilize such amount of finance. But in the same time, what is the return on this finance? I think the return is high. Return in terms of improving public health, in terms of improving water quality and reuse it again to produce other goods, either industrial or agriculture. If we talk about Africa, the potential for infrastructure is very high, infrastructure development. And when we talked about Victoria Mediterranean navigation route, I think this is one of the potential high revenue projects that would require even the PPP model to be part of this project. Because it is navigation, talks about trade, tourism, development in the whole Nile Basin. Most of the Nile Basin, almost all the Nile Basin countries are involved in this project. And if we have to do real development and fight poverty and eradicate poverty, I think this is the model that we need to work with. If we are talking about navigation route, if we are talking about highway, railway, and power interconnection, and data cabling, I think this is a very vital project for the basin. For us in Egypt, we believe that it is important, so we have changed the level of, or we have modified our infrastructure to accommodate the navigation. So we have converted all the lockers into two-way lockers along the Nile in Egypt. We have now a joint company with Sudan for river trade and river navigation. We have started, two roads connect Egypt to Sudan, and it will extend to South Sudan and also to Cape Town as the ambitious plan. We have the railway, and we are connecting now the railway. So we are constructing the fast railway, as well as this will be connected to Sudan, and then will continue to South Sudan and other Nile Basin countries. I think connecting the Nile, the countries with a network of river navigation, I think this is vital. In South Sudan, for example, they are suffering, very hard from flooding, and they stay for about 6 months without any movement or connectivity between cities. Imagine if these cities are connected by the river, and the river is dredged. I think the development rate in South Sudan and stability in South Sudan, I think, will be higher. So I think this session is one of the most important sessions. This is why I was keen to be part of this session, to share with you some ideas, and also listen to our colleagues from different countries and the financiers, what their requirements to boost this development and these projects in the region. With this, I'd like to thank you all.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Abdelati, Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation, Arab Republic of Egypt. And I think you touched upon something very important. It's the integration. We're not talking about individual countries anymore. It has to be all the way from Egypt all the way to South Africa. And actually, we're developing the whole society. It's not just the water thing. Water and railway and development for the people and competence and so on. And this is where I think the financial people would really find the interest, because there is always a return on investment. When you develop the people, when you develop the systems, the infrastructure, it's going to work for everyone, for businessmen and for whatever comes forward. Let me take the mic right now to our dear distinguished guest, Dr. Beth Dunford, the Vice President of Agriculture, Human and Social Development, African Development Bank, and she's going to be with us online. So, Dr. Beth, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear honorable ministers, esteemed guests, colleagues.
Can we just raise the voice a bit, gentlemen, if you can make it better?
Okay, can you hear me? Does that work?
Yep.
Great. Honorable ministers, esteemed guests, colleagues, all protocol observed, and salam alaikum. I want to welcome you to this first Water Investment Forum organized by the African Development Bank in partnership with the European Union, held during Water Week. And I want to thank the Egyptian authorities for providing a platform that consistently gathers the main stakeholders for discussion about the water and sanitation sector. Africa's water and sanitation sector development is central to the bank's strategic priority areas, as well as to our commitment to inclusive growth and gradual transition to green growth. I would also like to share that the bank recently approved a new policy on water. The policy is dedicated to enhancing Africa's water security and transforming its water assets to foster sustainable, green, and inclusive socioeconomic growth and development. We are also developing the Bank Group Water Strategy for 2021-2025. It highlights a water, food, energy nexus approach to water sector support to build a water secure Africa. The bank worked closely with partners to strengthen policy reforms, finance investments as part of our effort to help achieve the SDGs and the aspirations of the African Union's Agenda 2063 in regard to water resources, sustainability, service delivery, and resilience. The bank has invested more than $12 billion in water supply and sanitation through approximately 500 operations across the continent. And today there are 16 ongoing operations amounting to close to $1 billion in the region. In addition to infrastructure development, we engage our regional member countries to support enhancing and enabling environment through reforms and technical assistance. The bank supports the water development and sanitation sector through its public and also private sector window, which aims to provide the much needed financing to private sector entities. So let's talk about a little bit about our strong work program in Egypt. In the last decade, the bank financed 4 water sector operations worth $345 million in Egypt. This includes the flagship Gabal El Asfar wastewater treatment plant projects. It's Africa's largest wastewater treatment plant in terms of capacity, to 2.5 million cubic meters per day, and the second largest in the world. This Gabal El Asfar plant is also special because of its environmentally friendly approach to ensure high rates of energy recovery through sludge management. I congratulate the government of Egypt for the development of its water and sanitation sector. And despite the many, many challenges, Egypt is always one step ahead with a sound and progressive vision on the sustainable development of the sector. And really, it's the leadership that bolsters Egypt's name as al Dunya, the mother of the world. And I'm confident that together, we can continue to plan and develop successful projects, improving the quality of life for millions of Egyptians. Backed by strong private sector champions in the water and development sector, Egypt is leveraging development, much needed private sector funding to fast track infrastructure delivery and efficient management, which is very important. In this context, the bank wishes to increase its engagement with public utilities, municipalities, and the government of Egypt to boost private sector financing and participation in sector development across the country. We understand that the Egyptian government's priority is procuring infrastructure projects via public-private partnerships, and the bank's non-sovereign operations and water and sanitation team is closely following the diversity of desalination, waste to energy, and wastewater treatment projects that Egypt's Ministry of Housing aims to develop as public-private partnership projects. Please know that the bank is committed to support these projects by deploying senior loans, mobilizing concessional finance, and offering other financial instruments to build on our existing sovereign operation sector activity. As an accredited agency, the bank is proactively raising funding from climate funds to offer blended finance. I want to thank our co-organizers, the European Union, for their efforts in putting together today's Water Investment Forum. And this hybrid gathering is our opportunity to share successes, lessons learned that can enhance regional integration, as well as jumpstart important financial and technical partnerships. The African Union and Africa and the European Union share much more than the Mediterranean Sea. We share many challenges and opportunities for water development that can and are impacting lives. So welcome, ahlan wa sahlan, and I wish you a successful Water Investment Forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beth, and your Arabic is better than mine, so I would have loved to listen to the whole presentation in Arabic. She says the ayn very clear, mashallah. Thank you very much for the very insightful words that she says, and again, it's about the infrastructure. And I like that what the bank has been doing, you're really working on a long-term basis. And there are so many ways, we call them intelligent ways of funding, where I know that previously in our part of the world, there has been lots of things about like the BOT thing, build, operate, and transfer, and so on. But there are now more modern approaches where jointly with the private sector, it's a long-term process, and I think it deserves that. Right now, we have our third presentation. It's from His Excellency Ambassador Christian Berger, head of the European Union delegation to Egypt, and I think it's going to be a recorded one. So can we please share that? Yes, we do apologize for the technical issue over here. Very sorry for this, and I think we'll try to make this available offline later in a proper format for everyone. One thing I managed to grasp, which was very important, I guess, that the European Union has developed a different framework for operations to support the infrastructure, and that this needs lots of work from the different parties, including the private sector. But one word that is a key word for us over here is anything related to the laws and legislations. In the different countries, we have so many laws and bylaws, and I think sometimes they can be crippling, specifically for the private sector. So I think that's one area in our discussions. I think this needs to be handled, because the flow of money is one issue, but also the ease of doing business on the ground is another big challenge. Okay, so right now I'd like to thank our dear guests for this official high-level opening, and then we'd like to move straight away to our first session, and this is mainly focusing on sustainable financing for the water sector in Africa, and we're emphasizing and focusing on the impact of the pandemic also. The post-pandemic world is totally different, lots of challenges. We see lots of governments allocating most of their resources to poverty straight away. Sometimes the water issue might not come first in terms of priority, but it is very important. It affects everything. It affects health and affects the capabilities of people to work and move around freely and everything. So maybe that's one issue we need to discuss in full. Let me first welcome our dear distinguished guest, His Excellency Professor Abdel Qawi Khalifa, former Minister of Utilities and Irrigation Hydraulics and Hydraulics Professor, University of Ain Shams. Dr. Abdel Qawi, please.
Your Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased and honored to be with you today to discuss an important topic, which is the managing the finance of drinking water and sanitation sector. I would like also to thank the EU and the AFDB for inviting me to attend this event. Let me say a few words, a few statements for you from my capacity as a former Minister of Water and Wastewater Utilities. Before I go to that, I would like to mention that I'm glad to hear today from the EU and the African Development Bank that they are ready to finance the water and sanitation projects, especially in Africa. I'm glad also to hear from His Excellency Dr. Abdel that we have good connections now between the African countries. I think God gave us the River Nile to connect the African country. We should strengthen this connection, and I'm glad to hear today from His Excellency Dr. Abdel that the government here is trying to connect the African countries with Egypt through roads, through the River Nile. I think that's good to hear today. Let's go back to the water and wastewater sanitation sector. First of all, I would like to say that good management protects the drinking water and sanitation sector from any problems, even if there is a deficit in water and financial resources. Good management can improve that. The management of drinking water and sanitation sector should ensure equal distribution of resources and service among all citizens. The success of management of the drinking water and sanitation sector is achieved when the three parties participate in the administration of the service. The three parts are the service provider, the service recipient, and the service regulator. The success of good management needs good leadership, strategic goal, strategic plan, a clear vision of the goal, an organizational structure supported by the competence and expertise of employees to implement the plan. We should also have means of following up and measuring and monitoring what has been done of the plan to reach the goals. Everyone should know that the country cannot progress and grow without good drinking water and sanitation services, because it has direct impact on the health, performance, and the productivity of the citizen. The effect, and that affect all sectors of the country. Some countries suffer from a lack of technical and financial resources to implement the drinking water and sanitation project. These countries should hire consultant and contractor to do the technical and the construction works. They also look for method of financing the project through different models. The finance models are country budget, loan from development banks, grant from our partners in development, systems to finance like BOT, BOO, PPP, PPP, private-public partnership. It is very important to work with the private sector in the water and wastewater sector. It's very important to work with the private sector. Why? The private sector has the knowledge, experience, finance, and good management, which we need in this sector. Today, we would like to think together about how to plan a water and wastewater project, how to design water and wastewater project, how to construct water and wastewater project, and the most important one, how to finance the water and wastewater project. Finally, how to operate and maintain the water and wastewater project. This is a very important. We built the water and wastewater project in 1 or 2 years, but we operated for 10 years, maybe 30, 40, 50 years. We should give good attention to the operation and maintenance, have enough budget for the operation maintenance, have the right staff to do the operation and maintenance. Before I end my talk, I would like to give you our experience in the allocating budget for the water and wastewater sector in Egypt. Before the reform of water and wastewater sector, the government used to allocate 4 billion Egyptian pound per year, every year, 4 billion Egyptian pound, without any thinking. Exactly the same figure. We have the same figure for at least tens of years. And that was not enough to serve 80 million inhabitants at that time. When we started the reform, 2004, we received a grant from EU. We used part of this grant to prepare a water and wastewater master plan for the whole country. We hired 23 consultants, one for each governorate. We asked the consultant to do 4 tasks. The first one, to put all the information for water and wastewater facilities, network, treatment plant, so on, everything in details in GIS database. That was the first task. Second, carry out the hydraulic analysis and come up with the deficit in service. Third one, prepare tender documents for the project to overcome the deficits. Fourth, estimate the required budget for investment, renew and replacement, and operation and maintenance. The output of the master plan shows that we should have a budget of 17 billion Egyptian pound per year for the next 7 years, instead of 4 billion LE. You can see how's the big change after you did the master plan and you know your goals and you identify your projects. The budget required increases from 4 billion to 17 billion. We took the master plan and we presented to the Prime Minister at that time. He convinced it and he gave us the 17 billion Egyptian pound per year. And with this budget, we solved most of the problems in the water and wastewater sector. For sure, His Excellency Dr. Said will say more than, but we are talking about the 17 million that was in year 2007, 2008, but now you're exceeding this by a huge amount. I think at the end, I would like to thank the EU for their support at that time, because really the grant we get from the EU at the beginning of the reform was very, very helpful, and it helps us in initiating the 25 companies and put them on the track. The other thing I would like to mention that For the water and wastewater sector, you should have your master plan, and master plan should be updated on a daily basis, that you can see the situation clearly, how much money you have to spend, how much labor you need, and so on. Egypt now working in a very big project. It's a national project, which is the rural sanitation.
Africa is Europe's
We
closest
almost
neighbor.
cover
ties
the
that
drinking
bind
water,
Africa and the European
very
Union
close
are
to the
broad and
100%.
deep. But what binds us
The
are also
exact
shared
figure will
interests.
say
The conclusions
His Excellency
of the
Dr.
sixth
Said,
summit
but
between the African
we
Union
are
and
very
the
close
European
to
Union
that.
called for a
We still have a gap in the rural
2021
sanitation, and I
is
think
a
that's
pivotal
why
year
the
in living
government
up to
put a lot
these,
of budget
our common
to fill
ambitions.
this gap.
In
Once we
Africa,
fill
as well
this
as in the
gap,
European
we
Union,
will have a
Africa
very
is
small
Europe's
budget
closest
just to
neighbor,
cover
comprised
the growth rate. I would like to thank all our partners in development in supporting the water and wastewater sector. And I would like all our experience in this sector here in Egypt to be transferred to Africa. We have a lot of consultants now. They are doing a lot of works in the water and sanitation project. We have many contractors. They have done a lot of work in reused wastewater wastewater treatment plants, desalination. All this experience, I think we should transfer to the African countries, and I'm glad to hear that the EU and the African Development Bank, they have programs and models to support this project. Thank you all, and I wish you a good day today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdelkawi Khalifa. A great presentation. Lots of work done in Egypt and lots of lessons learned, and I totally agree with you. This should be shared with our distinguished guests and all our brotherly and sister countries in Africa. Right now we have a very distinguished list of panelists over here with us. We have a set of questions, and I'm not sure I'm going to direct any specific question to anyone, so I'm going to leave the floor for you, except for one specific question. I will direct it to His Excellency Dr. Said Ismail, Deputy Minister of Housing, Utilities and Urban Communities in Egypt, and that's specifically about the challenge with the gap in funding. So the water and sanitation sector is seeing its funding gap growing over time. What are the actions being taken to close this gap, and also while achieving the water-related SDGs by 2030?
Thank you.
So, Excellencies, ministers, colleagues, friends, development partners, friends of water, it's my pleasure to be with you today in this important session, and I want to thank the EU and African Development Bank for convening such important discussions about sustainable financing. And I think it's all about sustainability and efficiency as well, and how to move forward with this very important sector for the future. And allow me, before I answer the specific question, to give you some highlights about the sector. As we all know, water is not only the source of life. Water became a connector. Water became a bridge between nations, bridge between countries, bridge between continents, and the bridge even inside the same country between line ministries and the sectors. This is why it's very important to look for the water issues from the perspective of integration, not from working in separate islands. This is why the tremendous efforts have been done, and the very remarkable efforts have been done in the sector during the last 7 years. It was a result of the integration and the proper cooperation between the different line ministries. Water in Egypt is not only for the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. It's not only for the Ministry of housing, utilities, and urban communities. Water gathering a lot of sectors, a lot of ministries, a lot of stakeholders working together. So we are very proud for the work that's been done in Egypt. Since, as His Excellency Dr. Abdelawi said, the first reform for the sector in 2004, continuing to the second reform, not only for the sector, but for the whole government, for the whole country in 2014, as a part from the reforms and restructure is being done in all sectors in Egypt, in electricity, in energy, in water, economic reforms as well. And this is where we find the linkage between the water and sanitation sector, the sector we are concerned with in the Ministry of Housing, Utilities, and Urban Communities, and the sustainability and finance. And when you have a huge sector like the one we have in Egypt that's responsible to deliver the services for more than 100 million capital, it's a real huge commitment. And the sector in Egypt is responsible to provide this water and sanitation service for the main governorates, the 27 governorates, but also for the new cities and the new developments we see everywhere in Egypt. Besides the 27 main governorates in Egypt, we have now like 40 new cities in Egypt, ranging from the first generation, second generation, third generation, and fourth generation, like the new capital, new Al-Alamein, new Mansoura city, and so on. This is why when we started in 2014 for the second reform for the sector, we start with the assessment for the status of the sector at that time. Of course, we have a very successful story. It started with the coverage, especially for the drinking water, as mentioned by His Excellency Dr. Abdelawi Khalifa. And I think we reached in Egypt a very good coverage regarding drinking water. Today we speak about almost 99%. Affordability and accessibility with networks, treatment plants, etc. We speak about more than 34 million cubic meter a day in more than 2,700 facility for drinking water. But the challenge remains in the wastewater coverage. And if we look back in 2014, when the coverage in the rural sanitation was only 12%, and now today, while we are speaking, we speak about 40%, it seems that there was a lot of progress. But if we look front, still the way was very long. But hopefully, with the huge program that has been launched for Haya Karima, Decent Life, for rural Egypt, within the coming 3 years, we target to cover all the Egyptian governorates by the safely managed sanitation. And by the way, in Egypt, even currently, most of the villages provided with basic sanitation. For example, in Egypt, we don't have open defecation or people depending only on public toilets. All the people in all the villages, in all the cities, covered by basic sanitation. But we try to work on both, as I opened my remarks, sustainability and efficiency, to work on safely managed sanitation system, providing for all Egyptian citizens. We couldn't able to continue that progress without sustainable financing instruments. For example, for the last period, we worked a lot. We implement more than 1,000 different projects everywhere. You see, as mentioned by the distinguished speakers and the panelists regarding the huge facility like Bahr al-Bar reuse projects and Mahsama, and also for wastewater, domestic wastewater projects like Abu Rawash, like El Gabal al-Asfar, etc. But the context in Egypt is very diverse. It's completely different from rural areas and urban areas. It's completely different with Upper Egypt and the Delta region. It's completely different from the coastal areas and around the valley. This is why it's not just one solution fits all. This is why we should work a lot on the proper planning for investments. Exert the required efforts to work very efficiently and optimized. And back to the question, the gap. You can imagine this sector during the last 7 years, we invested in the sector something like 30 to 35 billion USD. 30 to 35 billion USD during the last 7 years. In average, in a daily budget, in an annual budget, exceeds now 40 billion Egyptian pounds. And as Dr. Abdelawi brings us from the history before 2014 and starting from 2004, the allocations were only something like 4-5 billion Egyptian pounds. So by number, we moved something like 10 times. But still, it's not the issue of providing the capex, the implementation. It's how to sustain, how to keep the performance for the long term for the projects, how to keep the life cycle for the projects and the performance at that level. This is why I think together with our development partners, African Development Bank, EU, World Bank, Asian Infrastructure Bank, Arab funds, etc., I think we have a very successful cooperation scheme. We are currently working in this sector with the development partners, I think more than 16 development partners, with a current budget for the sector, I think more than 5.4 billion USD. 5.4 billion USD. But again, this is for the capex, this is for the implementation, but how to move forward? I think it's time to have a very solid partnership between the government, the public sector, and the private sector. Maybe the main target during the last 5-6 years was how to extend the coverage, how to go to the lagging governorates, how to be positively responding to the people lacking for the service for many, many years. But with the proper coverage ratios that we reach currently and what we aim to achieve by 2025, and I think this is very linked to the achievement of SDGs, especially the goal 6.2. And I think before 2030, we will be able to achieve that goal for Egypt. We are planning to achieve it by 2025, by Hayat Karima. But even we have a lot of challenges facing this sector. And these challenges facing the sustainability, the finance, growing on. For example, the population increase. We increase annually in Egypt with more than 2 million capita. You imagine 2 million capita, sometimes it's like a whole countries. I guess all over the world we have more than 15 countries with population less than 2 million capita. So simply speaking, we are increasing with an annual population per year like a country every year. How challenging it is. Huge. The tariff. We have problems in the tariff structure. You can imagine that this tariff structure has been fixed for many, many years. In 2004, when we came to the sector, I think the first segment for the tariff for drinking water was 23 piastres per cubic meter, less than 2 cents. And this is also very challenging. So to sustain the finance, you need to solve this historical and deep problem. This is why we start working a step-by-step approach. In this sector, since 2015, we managed together to improve the performance of the operation, operating ratios, the tariff structure, but keeping into our focus the affordability for the different people segments. The social tariff, we should not avoid these categories of the people in some poverty levels, in some governorates, etc. This is why we are not that free to move on with the tariff structure, for example. A lot of studies, a lot of affordability, a lot of subsidies required by the government in that regard. This is why when we change the tariff 3 times from 2015 till today, we take into consideration that part from the population in some lagging governorates to keep the affordability issue, what we call it socio-economic tariff. That means the gap is still very big, the gap between cost of the service and the revenues. And this is part from the dilemma. Why we are moving to the private sector, it seems sometimes it's not that very fast, because we need to study very well, because there is overburden, there is commitments, should be carried somehow. This is why we tried even to refine and update and modify our legal framework. Only last week, the law for the private sector participation, Law 67, has been discussed in the Parliament, only last week, with some modifications, updates. We try our best to prevail the enabling environment for the private sector to come very efficiently, joining the government, overcome the common problems together. So the strategy for Egypt in the water and sanitation sector was made depending on 3 pillars. The first one, service provision. We moved very quickly with projects from small scale to big scale, as you see everywhere. The second pillar, depending on how to improve the practices, the operational practices for the service providers. Service providers for us is not only the official or governmental providers or water and sanitation companies per se, but it's also the private sector. The third pillar, which is the most important one, was the enabling environment. Legal enabling environment, institutional enabling environment, etc. In that regard, as I told you, the law for the private sector has been discussed last week. We have been done with the water and sanitation law. The draft is already finished now, and we are taking the procedures to send it to the Parliament for discussion and approval. Number 3, the water and sanitation sector strategy. You can imagine sector like water and sanitation sector in Egypt without a strategy, solid one, with action plans for all this time, This is why we launched this strategy from the Ministry of Housing, and we are very close to finalize this type of work. And here I invite all our colleagues, friends, development partners to share with us. We have a lot of lessons learned in this sector. We have a lot of successful models. We have our expertise, our professionals. And again, the core statement, bridging, communication, connections. Without all this integration, we could not be successful. And a lot of other issues regarding the tariff, the land acquisition. So we try our best to solve all these issues to close the gap for the finance. And back to the statement that it's not one size fits all. I think with the differences in Egypt, we still can work in different modalities. Part of the projects will still be funded locally from the local budget. Let's say part of our strategic desalination plan for 2050, that we need to build some plants with capacities, very small capacity, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000 cubic meter a day. I don't think this will be very appropriate for the private sector to come in. But we have plants like 800,000 cubic meter a day. In some areas where their affordability to pay the cost of the water. This is where, or what I mean by the proper planning for the investments, to achieve not only sustainability, but also efficiency. Part from the projects will be continued, cooperated with our IFIs and development partners, with all the valuable cooperation we see everywhere in the sector. As I told you, we have huge ongoing pipeline and under preparation. Part from the projects will be mainly appropriate for the private sector. And we have some successful examples in that regard. So that the biggest facility in new cities, it is in New Cairo City, under the umbrella of NUCA, New Urban Community Authority, 250,000 cubic meter a day facility, and this is PPP project, a very successful one on the water and sanitation sector. But with the new cities, maybe the context is completely different. The level of standard is completely different. The affordability to pay is completely different. So this is where to tackle, to build the puzzle in a correct way. So we still have a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. But to close this gap, I think we need to work together in innovative ways of finance. Innovation is not only in technology. Innovation also in finance. We need to work differently. We need to consider the priority of the pipeline and the strategy of the country. We need also to find new ways and the procedures together. And also I here invite our development partners to work with us, and also the private sector, on how to formulate the best model that can be suitable for Egypt. We are not moving regularly now. I think we are moving out of norms, out of engineering, out of time planning, a lot of things, because we're lagging a lot and lacking a lot in the previous period. So we are moving very, very quickly in that regard. I don't want to take a lot from your time, but I stop here and give the floor for the distinguished panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Said. Thank you very much, Dr. Said. Actually, we're a bit tight on time now. Just a quick comment that I know already that the African Development Bank has been working with several African countries on developing their comprehensive strategies, starting with Tunisia, I understand. So I think that the banks, as you mentioned, Dr. Said, are working to the funding partners, the bank, the EU, are working closely with the different governments. But as you said, it needs lots of coordination, lots of integration, and lots of innovation. As you said also, we need lots of creative ideas to make things happen. We have 4 distinguished guests, and I have 4 questions, and I have to put pressure on you gentlemen to make every answer in 5 minutes, just to keep with the pace, because we need to make up for lost time. So we have with us His Excellency Saeed Hussein, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Somalia. Also, we have His Excellency Carl Herman Gustav, Minister for Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, Republic of Namibia. And also His Excellency, the Deputy Minister of Environment, Sustainable Growth, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and also the Undersecretary for South Sudan, Engineer Emmanuel Ladu. And I have 4 questions. I'm going to leave the floor. Whoever wants to jump in and answer one of the questions that we have. Just tell me, I would like to listen, for example, from Namibia, what are the steps that you're taking to improve the enabling environment, to open it up to new approaches and technologies, while also bearing in mind this social equity? We don't want to lose the balance within the society. So, can Your Excellency Carl Herman Gustav, can you answer that? What are you doing in this regard, just to make sure you're enabling the environment and helping really change the environment while keeping the balance with the social equity in the country?
Thank you very much. Maybe if you allow me, if I have 5 minutes time, I can give you just a snapshot how Namibia looks like.
Sure.
We are the driest country south of the Sahara.
Yep.
So we are almost like Egypt without the Nile. Our population is depending on groundwater 60%. And we have no perennial rivers through the country. Our perennial rivers are on the borders with neighboring countries. Now, we believe that water must move to the center of the agenda for development and climate change, because if you think about it, agriculture, food security, in fact, all development is not possible without water. We believe that water has, from a funding point of view, been neglected. If we compare national budgets, what goes to defense, what goes to other sectors, with that what goes to water, there is no sense of priority for water if one compares the figures. You are right, Namibia is a country with a very unequal economic distribution. We are, they say, the second most unequal country. That is the apartheid legacy that we still battle with winning. Black people, the oppressed people are the poor people, and there are very few people that are rich. And that wealth of the rich people makes us a middle-income country. Your question, how do we prepare the environment? We have raised the matter of middle-income countries and how they are treated by multilateral financial institutions time and again. We believe that we're making some way, because a middle-income country gets no concessional financial treatment from multilateral institutions. We believe that that is making it unnecessarily difficult for countries like Namibia to fund our water projects. But with the African Development Bank, we have made some progress, and we have now agreed to a blended set of funding where some conditionality is given towards loans, but also grant elements are brought into for feasibility study and project bankability studies and so on. The same we have done with KFW, but I believe we should be more aggressive with blending and making funding more concessional, more available, and more accessible for small middle-income countries. The director said they grow with a country per year. That's true. They grow with Namibia a year. We are 2.5 million people. Egypt, I have it, is having 104 million people. But that is not to say that small countries have lesser need to provide water in a sustainable manner. So I don't believe that we should be in as much as I agree with the arguments, but I don't think we should be misguided by saying size is always more important. It is not. We are talking to human beings and they have the same right. And I believe that is another aspect that we have to look within the environment of funding. Small countries are as important as big countries when it comes to the need of water infrastructure to be funded. There's one issue that I believe this conference is doing well with, and that is to put the management of transboundary water resources at the center of the agenda. In Namibia, as I said, all our perennial rivers are on the border. More than half of our population is directly dependent on water from these perennial rivers. In all of them, we have some issues where national interests prevail over regional interests or common interests. And I believe that the drive to oblige riparian countries to cooperate with an aim to better utilize, better manage water resources and avoid conflict and war is an important one, and we want to congratulate this Water Week, the Honourable Minister, for having put that topic centrally into the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And you're totally right. The experience that's taking place in Namibia is one to really follow, because it has taken always a peaceful approach in very difficult situation. Now I want to take the second question to our distinguished guest from representing the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I want to hear from you. So what are you actually, how do you see the view in the role of the private sector funding? How is it intervening? Because I've been to your country, it's a beautiful country and it's growing very fast. And the private sector there, we know, because some Egyptian firms are working with the private sector, with the government in the area of technology and infrastructure. How is it happening? Is there a potential there in the water sector?
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, messieurs les organisateurs. Au nom de mon ministre, le vice-premier ministre, ministre en charge de l'environnement, qui a pris son vol hier la nuit, je tiens à vous remercier et à dire grand merci à cette organisation qui nous permet aujourd'hui d'échanger sur ces volets financiers. Là, nous venons de suivre deux tableaux qui sont aux antipodes, qui sont vraiment opposés. Vous avez la République arabe d'Égypte, une puissance économique avec trop peu d'eau et qui se bat pour valoriser les peu d'eau qu'il a. Et à ma gauche, vous avez la Namibie, un pays côtier qui n'a pas beaucoup de cours d'eau, qui n'a pas d'eau et qui n'a pas de moyens pour le faire. Et la parole est accordée à la République démocratique du Congo, qui vous présente un tableau avec excessivement d'eau, mais qui ne sont pas valorisés. C'est un peu ça les détresses que nous avons ces jours. Donc c'est de voir cette disponibilité naturelle d'eau, mais qui n'est pas valorisée, qui n'est pas réellement mis à profit pour le bien de sa population ou pour le bien du continent. L'occasion qui nous est donnée aujourd'hui devant l'Union européenne, devant la Banque africaine de développement, me permet effectivement de poser les problèmes tels qu'ils se posent. C'est de demander aux deux grands partenaires du continent, notre ami l'Union européenne et les frères éternels l'Union africaine, la Banque africaine de développement, de changer un peu la manière de voir les choses. La République démocratique du Congo est au centre de ce grand continent. Il appartient à 4 organisations du bassin en matière de gestion de l'eau. Vous avez le bassin du Congo, vous avez le bassin du lac Tanganyika, le bassin du lac Kivu et le bassin du Nil. Et au-delà de ces deux politiques régionales, le pays s'est inscrit. Au-delà de ces 4 structures régionales, le pays s'est inscrit dans une logique des politiques régionales. Avec tous les pays de la CEAC, nous disposons d'une politique de gestion durable des ressources en eau, ainsi qu'avec tous les pays de la SADC, l'Organisation des pays de l'Afrique australe. Donc nous avons aussi une politique de gestion des ressources en eau avec tous les pays du sud du continent. Mais le constat malheureux, c'est qu'au-delà des efforts qui sont fournis par les pays, qui en réalité, il faut le dire, n'arrivent pas à valoriser les ressources en eau parce qu'il n'y a pas carence. Pourtant, cette manière de voir des choses n'est pas la correcte. La manière, c'est de faire un effort, même s'il y en a beaucoup, mais de valoriser, de quantifier, de répondre à tous les usages que la population attend, et en Afrique, et au Congo, et au-delà du Congo. Alors, cette manière de voir des choses, de dire il y en a suffisamment, ça ne sert à rien d'investir, à contaminer aussi les partenaires financiers. L'Union européenne et la Banque africaine de développement, qui sont représentés au Congo, financent plus les secteurs utilisateurs des ressources en eau, comme la santé, comme les transports, comme les infrastructures, comme l'agriculture, la pêche, mais ne financent pratiquement pas les secteurs de gestion des ressources en eau qui en réalité garantit de l'eau en quantité et en qualité pour différents usages. Donc c'est ici l'occasion pour moi d'appeler les partenaires de penser plus à financer les secteurs gestionnaires des ressources en eau qui va disponibiliser de l'eau pour différents usages qui peuvent être utilisés et sur le continent et sur les territoires nationaux et au-delà du territoire national sous diverses formes. Donc voilà un peu la contribution que j'avais à mettre à ce niveau ici, c'est de dire oui, nous avons suffisamment d'eau, mais nous devons prendre conscience avec l'appui de nos partenaires à faire en sorte que cette quantité d'eau que nous disposons soit bénéfique pour les peuples de la RDC et pour les peuples du continent, étant donné que l'eau constitue un maillot important dans l'atténuation et l'adaptation aux effets négatifs du changement climatique. J'ai dit, je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I would have loved to comment, but I have no clue about the French. Only when we were so young, we used to listen to the French love songs. They were super, but didn't really make a big difference back then. Okay, thank you very much for this. Now, my next question goes to our distinguished guest, His Excellency Dr. Saeed Hussein, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development in Somalia. And Somalia, a very dear country to Egyptians, and I know that you've been going through very hard times over the past years. So, the environment at your own country, which aspects of the enabling environment that needs to be addressed immediately? What do you need to do with the current environment in Somalia to really prepare it for better investment in this area, in the water area?
Thank you very much, and Excellencies, Ministries, distinguished guests, development partners, and respected audience. Somalia is considered as a post-conflict country where the infrastructure, the basic infrastructure of water resources has been affected by the long civil war. And now we are recovering with peace prevailing in most of the countries. We have two rivers as a downstream country, which are coming from Ethiopia and Kenya. And they cover around 2,300 kilometers in the riverine area of the south of the country. We have also seasonal rains, Gu and Day, who annually. So Somalia is considered a drought-prone country as a nature with the rest of the Horn of Africa countries, who always affected by recurrent droughts, as you are all aware. We are also hosting a huge population of livestock, which consumes a lot of water. Somalia is the #1 country in the camel population of the world, where we have 7 million heads of camel population. And the camel, as you know, consumes a lot of water. And we have also other livestock population. As far as the investment in the water and sanitation in Somalia, most of the major cities, the water utility is provided by SE4.1 public-private partnership with initial investment from our development partners, where EU is considered the largest contributor in the water sector in Somalia. We have also partnership with the African Development Bank, which invests heavily in the infrastructure, water infrastructure. And also we have corridors which connects Somalia with the rest of the region. You have a Horn of Africa Economic Initiative, which is World Bank, African Development Bank, IGAD, sponsored project where they are trying to uplink the Horn of Africa countries as part of the economic integration, the greater economic integration of the region. So we are trying, recently the government in Somalia now has been very successful in handling the debt relief issue, where we have become eligible for AIDA funds. So and now Somalia is getting large, considerable investment from the World Bank, IMF, and other development partners, African Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, other sovereign funds. And we are trying to, we have the first national water strategy as a comprehensive strategy for reforming and regulating the water sector in Somalia to get benefit from these available resources, and also to mitigate the risks of climate change. We have been affected by recurring cyclones who are disrupting the water system in the country. Floods also have been come heavily on us as part of this climate change effects. We have also, we got recently also, the Horn of Africa has been affected by large and unprecedented desert locust upsurge in Somalia, and also in the other regions, Ethiopia, Kenya, Yemen, all have been, Eritrea also, have been affected by the worst invasion of desert locusts in the country. So we are very open for investment, and EU, African Union, African Development Bank are very effective partners with us, and we hope they will increase substantially the investment in the water sector area, where that's very important for Somalia livelihood, and also to attain food security system where there is a correlation between water and food security. Wherever we have deficiency in water utilization and water availability, where that is definitely will cause a food crisis in Somalia and other sub-Saharan countries. So Somalia is open for investment. We have very friendly policies which create conducive environment for our partners to get involved, and we have also a very vibrant private sector who are very much engaged in the provision of water resource utility. With still the price they charge is not as we like, but they are becoming more and more reasonably cheap. But still that requires investment. And as far as the other water resources sectors, we are trying now to work rehabilitation of the irrigation systems in the country, which has been affected by the long civil war. And also we have the terrorism challenges, which tries to disrupt some areas in the rural area and in the agricultural sector. Somalia is now considered one of the top 10 exporters of sesame. We have also a large export of dry lemon. Somalia also have a well-known brand of banana, in which we, for the first time in 2 decades, we are trying to export it to the Gulf countries and other countries. And we have also a very good relationship with Egypt in terms of exporting the livestock, especially the cattle. And Egypt is also have very historical, long relationship with Somalia in terms of export and import. And in terms of irrigation and water engagement, we have very good relationship with Egypt. I had a good discussion with the Minister of Water Resources, Dr. Mohammed Abdel Al, regarding the collaboration in the development of the irrigation system in Somalia, and Egypt is also supporting us in terms of expertise. So that's all I can say in this short intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for a very rich experience, and I'm happy. The first thing you mentioned is this public-private relationship and partnership. I think this opens lots of doors until the government is fully controlling the land and so on. Now, last but not least, we have our distinguished guest, the Undersecretary representing South Sudan, Engineer Emmanuel Ladu. And South Sudan, again, it's an emerging country, and there are so many challenges. What are the dire needs that you would require today from your development partners, such as the EU and the African Development Bank? What would be the main things of priority for you?
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say something about the development of water resources and management of water resources in the Republic of South Sudan. As you have said, we're really faced with a lot of challenges, and South Sudan is still a new country. We got our independence in 2011, and no sooner had we established our infrastructure and the structures in place, we also went into war with ourselves in 2013, and that war also was repeated in 2016, where a lot of devastation has taken place. We felt that from 2005, when the government of national unity with Sudan was established, we had succeeded to gain improvements in the water and sanitation sector. But unfortunately, when the country went to war in 2013 and 2016, the infrastructure was destroyed. Water coverage, which had gone to some extent up to 40%, was never there. It was lost. Sanitation became worse because people were no longer living in their households. They have been moved to live in settlement camps as IDPs, and others left the country altogether, and they became refugees. But all the same, what I would like to say is that there have been a number of development partners who have been standing with us all along this time. You know, when you're at war, your governance structure is questioned. Flow of funds into your country becomes questioned as to how you're going to use that fund, whether you're going to use it for war or you're going to use it for development or for other kind of, So flow of funds to the water sector dwindled. Even the small finances that's supposed to come from the Ministry of Finance is never regular because the country has a lot of priorities. So what I would like to say is that actually we never had a breakthrough in the water sector, but with the peace which was signed in 2018, there's relative stability, and we're grateful that a number of our development partners which have been working with us all along are coming up and trying to support the government to ensure that water and sanitation infrastructure is created for people to be able to come back and have dignified living in their home states. The legal framework in the Republic of South Sudan encourages the private sector to invest, and the environment policies also in the country are very attractive. The purchasing power of the local communities, for instance, if someone invests in a water supply infrastructure, the return on investment is very high, and so the opportunities are really very great. So there are a number of projects and partners who have been collaborating together. I would like to mention some of them here. We have the Egyptian government. They have been assisting us with the supply of water and also assisting us in these projects called Hafirs, or water harvesting. And also, one of our challenges is in the water resources management. The river courses in the country are silted and they're blocked, so they needed to be dredged in order to increase the flow of water. I'd also would like to remove the aquatic weed to enable smooth flows of water. One of the agencies also participating currently with the government of South Sudan, or especially the Ministry of Water Resources, is the government of the Netherlands. They are assisting us in water and sanitation subsector. They also assist us in management of water, especially the flooding which has affected one of the towns in the Republic of South Sudan, and that is Bor. They have a flood risk mitigation project. The German government is also one of the important partners in the water and sanitation sector. We also have the African Development Bank. They're currently implementing 2 projects. One is Resilient Water Project for improved livelihoods in Juba, and the other one is Strategic Water Supply Sanitation Implementation Project. JICA has all along been with us, even during the war, so they're supporting us in the development of urban water. China is coming on board with some rural water supply infrastructure development in place. However, the COVID-19 pandemic is actually came at a wrong time, for instance, when we say for us, because we're trying to realize some developments, then COVID-19 came in. Those partners who are interested to come to invest in the water sector have to change priorities because the fight against COVID affects the whole world. Even if it means water is supposed to be key in the forefront for fighting COVID-19, a lot of players and actors came on board. UNICEF, which used to work closely with the Ministry of Water Resources to advance projects and programs in the water sector, received less funding because most of funds have now been diverted and were now being implemented on emergency program. So as a country, coming back to your question, we are open to partnership with development partners. We would like to put the past mistakes which the government has done, and we're moving forward to implement the peace so that we create the conducive and necessary environment for implementation of projects and programs which can sustain the livelihoods of people in the Republic of South Sudan. They've suffered for so long, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Emmanuel. And I'll stop at one word you said earlier in the beginning. You said in war with ourselves. I think the biggest obstacle in our continent is our internal conflicts and issues. Once we're aligned in one direction, I think we go to extents like never before. So before we wrap up, I think we're gonna listen again. I think we sorted out the technical issues. We're gonna listen again to the speech from the European Union. But before this, Dr. Ayman, would you have any comment to say on what we've listened to?
Well, from...
Okay, we'll take it after the
and the European Union are broad and deep, but what binds us are also shared interests. The conclusions of the 6th summit between the African Union and the European Union call for a strengthened partnership. 2021 is a pivotal year in living up to these, our common ambitions. In Africa, as well as in the European Union, new prospects and challenges emerge from economic, political, and social changes, but also technological, demographic, and environmental changes. Therefore, a solid cooperation is necessary to tackle the challenges of the 21st century and to further our common interests. This is crucial for our future. Water security is considered among the common challenges that require a joint response. The water infrastructure is one of the key drivers for sustainable development in Africa. The path to water security is diverse, as is the context of each country. The water sector is indeed a top priority for the European Union. This topic is and will remain one of our main pillars of intervention. Investing in human capital while ensuring the presence of a strong public awareness alongside investment in infrastructure will go hand in hand. The high demand for a regional water infrastructure is common to African countries and involves both challenges and opportunities for sustainable development. However, given the pressure placed on national budgets by development needs, addressing infrastructure issues will require participation, risk sharing, and coordination from various actors, including international development partners, national governments, and the private sector. In response to these challenges, the European Union has launched a new comprehensive EU strategy with Africa that is built on partnerships, including a partnership for sustainable growth and jobs, and a partnership for digital transformation with the water sector, a cornerstone involved. In line with the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the European Union steps up its engagement with EU member states and institutions, including the European Development and financial institutions, to mobilize private funding. To attract international investors, the European Union is leading innovative efforts to set up a financial system that supports sustainable growth. Today's event is expected to show us how to translate these plans into action. This requires a strategic and direct discussion with the private sector, investors, and international financial institutions to discuss the required means to cover the financial gap, key challenges in financial, legal, and institutional terms, means to support public-private sector partnership in the water sector, and the required actions to create an enabling environment to foster local and international partnerships. As the European Union, we do not stand still. We are taking the first step through launching the Global Europe instrument for the next period that runs from 21 to 27. This instrument will support the EU's external action with an overall budget of 79.5 billion euros. The water sector in African countries could have a significant opportunity to make use of the strong resources once a renewed partnership between the public and private sectors is achieved. Today's event helps us to re-emphasize the significant importance of the regional and transboundary dimension of cooperation in this field. This cannot be achieved without knowledge and best practice sharing. Implementation of the regional cooperation will be effective if there is strong participation and replication in countries at national, regional, and local levels. Looking forward to see you all once again in the second EU-AFDB Water Investment Forum next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Ayman, would you have any final comments on this session?
Well, I think what our ambassador just said related that common challenges require common solutions. We have a clear financial gap, but still finance was never the problem. I mean, the EU have recently launched this massive financing modality under the NDK. We are talking of up to 80 billion euros in the upcoming multi-annual financial framework, working with multilateral financing institutions, especially in Africa, the African Development Bank. Much of funds could be mobilized through concessional, non-concessional finance. But the important thing is to have a strong policy dialogue between all the stakeholders, either public institutions, private sector, local communities, to identify and to prioritize investment needs, to set the responsibility metrics and ensure sustainability. I believe today's event, and hopefully other will come forward, and after listening to our distinguished panelists and Your Excellency, the ministers, I think we share the same challenges. I mean, it might differ the severity from one country to another in a certain topic or a certain subsector, but there are common challenges. And I think a common strategy could be achieved, and lesson learned from one country to another, especially South-South cooperation between African countries, could be fostered, and therefore solutions that are localized to the existing situation could be achieved. And our role as development partners is to facilitate the discussions and to provide the finance required in the most appropriate and, let's say, incentivizing financial condition, which I think the least problem. And I hope that with today and this discussion, we could create the first step for that. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Ayman, and I totally agree with you. The money is never the obstacle. I think it's all about the laws, the bylaws, the policies. And I think we have two challenges. We have in-country policies to enable and incentivize, as you said, but then the challenge of working cross countries, across geographic territories. I think that's another big challenge, and I think that's one of your focus areas in the coming period. Thank you very much, my dear distinguished guests, for a very rich session. And I think we're going to be having a break now for 20 minutes. Going to be back once again right after this on a special session about the various forms of private sector involvement in the water sanitation sector, led by our dear distinguished guest, Dr. Philip Riddle. So be with us, inshallah, back again, and have a great time. Thank you very much.